much more. Nothing we have satisfies. We are thirsty for healing water. Can it be found without a price? Is there more than what we know? Seek the Lord and He will be found. Call upon Him and He will draw near. Yeah, seek the Lord and He will be found. Shows His mercy and compassion. Whoa. We are waiting for so much more, working harder every day. We are searching for deeper meaning. Help us understand your way. Is there more than what we know? Seek the Lord and He will be found. Call upon Him and He will draw near. Yeah, seek the Lord and He will be found. Shows His mercy and compassion. Whoa. We find joy in this lifetime. We find peace in the storm. Lord, help us find You. Help us listen and be still. Seek the Lord and He will be found. Call upon Him and He will draw near. Yeah, seek the Lord and He will be found. Call upon Him and He will draw near. Yeah, seek the Lord and He will be found. He shows His mercy and compassion. Whoa. Well, good morning. Let's all stand up if you would. My name is Roy, and usually you see this very tall lady, this friend of mine. Her name's Andrea. She's up here doing this normally. She's doing a little something we call a weighted. Hopefully you've been able to do that. We do that at Oakley, and you can see her up there. Highly recommend it if you haven't gotten tickets. You should do it and invite other people too. There's probably plenty of standby tickets left. It's totally worth it. It's a huge thing that we do around here. We pull out all the stops. So at any rate, really glad you guys are here this week. And if you're new, it's your first time, special welcome to you. My name is Roy, if I hadn't said it already, and I'm so glad that you're here. For the second week in a row, I'd just like to buy you all coffee. So just because I'm so grateful, it's Christmas, right? And so just go out there, get some coffee if you haven't already, and don't even think about paying. It's a gift from my heart to your mouth. All right, so listen, we're really glad you guys are here this week. We're going to continue some music, and we ask that you guys sing. Just sing louder than me. yours to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in unsearchable minds, never failing skill, treasures up his designs and works his sovereign will. You fearful saints, fresh courage take, the clouds you so much dread, big mercy and shall break in blessing, in blessing, in blessing on your head. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes wrapping fast, folding every hour. But may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. You fearful saint, fresh courage take, the clouds you so much dread, big with mercy and shall break in blessing, in blessings on, in blessings on your head. In blessings on. Be fearful saints, fresh courage take, the clouds you so much dread, big with mercy and shall break in blessing, in blessings, in blessings on your head. You fearful saints, fresh courage take, the clouds you so much dread, big with mercy and shall break in blessing, in blessings on, in blessings on your head. Your head, oh. You guys sing out the in blessings part. In blessings, in blessings, in blessings on your head. In blessings. Your head, sing again. In blessings. are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till He appeared, and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine. Oh, night He taught us to love one another. His call is love, and His gospel is peace. Chains shall He break, for the slave is our brother, and in His name all oppression shall cease. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine. Oh, night Christ was born. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night Oh, night. Oh, night. Night divine. God, I just thank you that you are God of great mystery and that you love me enough to do all these crazy, mysterious things that work in my life to make me better, and I don't deserve it, but I have all this freedom, and I fail a lot, but I know that you're my loving Father, and I'm still learning what that means, and I just know that I need more of you and more of your mystery in my life. Amen. Well, thanks for singing with us, you guys. You did fantastic. The best crowd today, easily. Well, the only one so far, but still the best. Do me a favor, go ahead and turn around and say good morning to somebody. Maybe introduce yourself. And you can have a seat after that.
Well, hey, everybody, how we doing? Let's give Rory and the guys a big hand. Every weekend, they absolutely crush music ministry. I have to tell you, I was excited this morning when I got up and I looked at my calendar, because on my calendar, it says CBBD. I don't know if any of you have that on your calendar, but for me, it's Cleveland Browns Beatdown Day. Today! Today's the day we travel north and give it to them. My name's Joe. I'm Reach Out Director here part-time, which means I oversee things like Thanksgiving food drive, which we did a while back, which you all absolutely killed. You killed Thanksgiving food drive. We do Angel Tree Ministries and some other things around here to bless the community outside the walls of Crossroads. So glad to be here. Roy mentioned Awaited. How many of you have seen Awaited already? I'll tell you, it is not only the biggest show in town, it's one of the biggest shows in the country. We've done a little bit of research, and we find that there's no other show in the country that has more tickets available and more performances than Awaited does. Yeah, it's a blessing on our community and a blessing on everybody. So if you've already seen it, terrific. If you haven't, it runs through the 23rd, still plenty of time to go see it, so make sure that you do. If you are somebody that's gotten tickets and you're not going to use all of them, don't be a loser. Return them. There are people that want to go, so make sure you return those tickets so everybody can be blessed by that. Angel Tree Ministry I mentioned. So for the last 2 weeks, people have been taking tags off of trees, going and buying gifts, wrapping them, and bringing those back. Angel Tree Ministry is a prison ministry that, interestingly enough, was started by a woman who went to prison during the Watergate administration. And while in prison, she came to Christ, and she started the Angel Tree Ministry. So what it does is we buy gifts, and the next weekend, we'll deliver those gifts to children in our community whose parents are incarcerated. And one of the real blessings of it is that in January, in prisons across the country, men will go to services and come to Christ because their children have told them what it was like to get a gift from them during Christmas. So well done for everybody that's participated in Angel Tree. If you have a gift that hasn't come back, today's the day. Got to get those back so we can prepare to send those out. We will have a percentage that don't come back, so we need some Angel Tree elves. Some people that can go out last minute, buy some gifts so we can make sure that there's no kid that misses one. So if you want to do that, you want to participate in the ministry that way, make sure that you see the elves that are out in the atrium that you saw by the Christmas trees. They can sign you up and you can help be a blessing in that way. So this weekend is the final weekend of our Awaited Behind the Scenes. Has this not been a great, great series to look at what Awaited does? It's been really, really good. So we have one more weekend of that, actually, and it'll be next weekend. And then that's our final service until the 4th of January. We're going to take a little time off to be with family other than Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve, we're going to have a 3 o'clock and a 5 o'clock service. It's kid-friendly, so there won't be any kids club. So bring your family, bring everybody. You know, we really love being relational around here. We believe that Christ calls us to be in community and to share his love, and what better way to do that than on Christmas Eve with services. So make sure you come back for that. We're going to have an opportunity to give now. There are a lot of things that God calls us to do. And when we pull our resources, it allows us to do exciting things like Awaited, have a Christmas Eve service, bless the community through Reach Out, across the sea in India and other places. So we're going to have an opportunity to be a blessing right now on those. If this is your first time here, we just want that bag to pass you right by. We don't want you, we're not about your money. We're about you coming to Christ and being here with us and joining us wherever you are. You can also give through eGift if you go to crossroads.net/eGive. You know, my wife and I, things that are truly important to us, we make it automatic so we don't have to think about it. So e-giving is a great way to give around here, so you can do that as well. Christmas, I love this time of year. It's about family. It's about the birth of Christ. And sometimes it's even about my crazy uncle. Enjoy.
Yeah, hey, Merry Christmas. Nothing says Merry Christmas like Cousin Eddie, right? Huh? My name's Greg. I'm the campus pastor around here. Welcome to Crossroads Westside. Welcome, Auditorium B. I'm sorry you have 35 minutes of shiny baldness this weekend, so just put on your shades if you need to. We're in full swing of Awaited, and I'm hoping that we're a packed room today because a lot of you have never been out to Westside. So Oakley is doing full Awaited, and they've said if you still want to get your normal Sunday, you can go check out Florence, Mason, or Westside. Really, really good to have you here. Maybe you've never been to Crossroads at all, and it's your first time. Welcome. Really glad to have you here. I actually got a little inside tip. I think Cousin Eddie is from the West Side. Now, I haven't been here long enough to make jokes like that, so I'm sure I'm going to get emails, but just look at the dickie. I mean, it says it all. So we're in full swing of Awaited. How many people have seen Awaited so far? Fantastic. Fantastic. So here's the thing. I was at Awaited on Monday night. We took our family. I was on Wednesday night. West Side volunteered. So we had 150 of us. Who volunteered Wednesday night? Yes. It was awesome, making sure everyone had hot cocoa and stuff. I want you to know, I was also there Friday night doing some stuff behind the scenes. Friday night, out of 3,300 seats, there were 2,600 in attendance. 2,600. So if you're one of those people and you're going, man, I'm bummed, I wanted to go to Awaited, I can't get tickets, or my neighbors wanted to go to Awaited and I can't get tickets for them, just show up. I'm telling you, there are seats to go around. So we took our girls on Monday to go, and in the car on the way there, Emmy, our 3-year-old, kept saying, Daddy, I'm so scared of the shepherds. I don't like the shepherds. I said, hey, it's okay, we'll be there beside you. Well, as soon as we sit down and I restrain my 18-month-old on my lap, she goes into like straight board mode, and I realize this isn't going to work. People know who I am, and if I disrupt the whole show, I got to go. So I went to the atrium with Liv, and sure enough, Emmy was terrified of what she thought were the shepherds. They're actually the angels. The 38-foot angel drops that come down and the warriors on them freak her out, and they freak a lot of people out. That's why the first things they say are, fear not, fear not. That's what we're going to be talking about today as we continue this series, Behind the Scenes of Awaited. We're actually going to be looking at Mary and Joseph and how fear is an integral part of the Christmas story. Now, I know fear and Christmas are not always tied together outside of the few people that still have some Halloween decorations left up, but there are some really real ties of Christmas and fear. In fact, blockbuster hits. So how many of you have seen this one? Nightmare Before Christmas. Pumpkin Jack, he's used to Pumpkinland, but he gets a glimpse of the Christmas tree and Santa, and he loves it. Some other classics like this one, Santa's Sleigh. Santa's Sleigh, man, stocking stuffer. And my favorite, Silent Night, Bloody Night. Sorry, all right, take these down. Some people are getting bad images. If you have these DVDs, something is wrong with you. I don't know who's doing this, but we try to force fit fear and Christmas together, and it even sort of is repulsive, looking like, man, who would do this? But the reality is it is ingrained in the Christmas story. In fact, the narrative of the Christmas story happens 2 places in the Bible, in the 4 authorized biographies of Jesus' life, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew and Luke both give us an account of Jesus' birth. And so I just sort of went through these and said, well, let's see what the overall common thread is and where fear pops up, and I chose a few of them. Matthew chapter 1, verse 20, the first place we see it, an angel tells Joseph, do not fear. Then later, chapter 2, verse 3, King Herod, the ruler of the time, catches wind that a new king is going to be born, and it says that he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. Not just him, but the entire city was troubled at the news of this birth. And to Luke, chapter 1, verse 30, an angel says to Mary, "Do not be afraid." And then later, John the Baptist is born, Jesus' cousin, and they're finding out that this is a prediction of the Messiah, and it says that when people find out John's been born, fear came upon all of their neighbors. And then maybe the one you know from Charlie Brown Christmas in Luke 2:9, where the angels appear to the shepherds, and they have to go, "Fear not," because it says they were filled with great fear. Filled with great fear. Now, there's a lot more fear happening in the Christmas story than I would have guessed there was. There's a lot more fear, and you might be thinking, why can't Crossroads ever do a normal, warm, fuzzy Christmas service? Now we're going to talk about fear all day. Well, there's good news, and the Christmas message around fear is this. It's that Jesus' birth was the death of fear. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Jesus' birth was the death of fear. You know, I tried to get a little bit intellectual on these verses. I thought, I wonder if I went and looked in the original language, if I could figure out how to do that, what these words were that were meaning fear and afraid. I wonder what the different types of things they were talking about. Well, they all come from the same word. Whether it's fear or afraid, they all come from the Greek word phobeo. And phobeo, if you see it spelled out, looks a lot like our word phobia. So when you read this isn't just like, ooh, the shepherds were startled because some angels showed up. No, this is like pee your pants, terrified. They developed a phobia over this. So the fear that is rooted in the birth of Jesus is a really deep kind of fear. And yet, we have this amazing contrast because it says God sends his son, he takes on flesh, he's born in a manger, and his very birth casts out fear. I love the way 1 John says it in chapter 4, verse 18. It says, "There's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear." Perfect love casts out fear. In this context of Christmas time, I can't think of a more perfect love than the love of God sending his son into the world to live a life that he would ultimately die, to be reconciled to his children. And that perfect love, anywhere it's around us, is cast out. In the same way that all through this series, week 1, we talked how the shepherds were brought from a dirty, filthy place of being cast out. They were brought in and included. Chuck talked about how wherever this light happens, it casts out all darkness. Last week, Brian talked about even this nation of Israel who was broken and enslaved through Jesus actually became whole. And so today we're going to be looking at that, of how Jesus can take us from a place of fear into a place of faith. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of us, actually let's do a show of hands. How many of you would say you're a little stressed right now? Mid-December, Christmas coming, yeah, a lot of hands. Stressed, man, it's just crazy time of year. And yet, don't raise your hands on this one. I'm guessing if I were to go, how many of us would say that we're generally fearful people? Not a lot of hands would want to go up. Not a lot of hands would want to go up. Because it's almost this weird thing we have in our society where like, man, it's totally cool to say we're stressed, totally cool to say we're busy, because it just means we're important, we have a lot going on, but we don't really ever want to raise our hand and say, yes, I am a fearful person. Fear is something that rules my life. And yet, I think they're sometimes often the same thing. So fear, anxiety, worry, these are really just fancy words for fear, because what we're saying is, hey, something here is not going to go like I planned it to. At the end of the day, my best interest is not here, and so I need to be fearful of it. I need to be fearful of it. I took a look at the fears in the news recently. In fact, many of you are surprised that you're here in December of 2014 because you thought for sure you would be dead of Ebola by now, right? We are a fearful, fearful nation. So this one study took a look and said, hey, what are the top 5 fears? Here they are. Number 5, the dreaded public speaking. Number 4, being the victim of a mass or random shooting. 3, safety on the internet. 2, becoming the victim of identity theft. And number one fear in our country, walking alone at night. Now, I saw this in a couple observations, the first of which I just thought, like, well, this clearly wasn't done on the west side, because fear of being in a mass shooting where everyone has a concealed carry, the numbers just go way down, way down. And in fact, this is a very safe campus. You're not supposed to, but I guarantee that some people are protecting us right now. So that was my first thing. And also public speaking. I thought, wait a second, I thought public speaking was number 1. How is public speaking falling down to number 5 over things like identity theft? Last time I was losing sleep, it was not because I was worried that someone got my Facebook password and was going to drain my accounts. It was interesting to me. But I found a guy who's a professor in Minnesota, and he's got a hunch as to why this is. This is what he says. People judge the likeliness of bad things happening not based on actual data, but what's available to them. The media overreports these negative events, and it leads people to exaggerate. So what he's basically saying is every time that you scroll down your news feed and you check out CNN.com, you are defining in your mind what your fears are. He's saying, we're only going to report on things that are interesting and that are going to catch people's eyes, and therefore we define people's fears. I signed up for the Three Rivers newsletter listserv just to sort of be in the know on the community. Our girls will go there someday. And they sent out an email this week, just said, hey, want to let you know, one of the students has been found to have whooping cough. And then straight out of a WebMD, I could tell they just copied and pasted it because they talked about how it's very contagious, how it's the symptoms are little known, and how it often results in death. I thought, okay, probably defining some fears around here for the people whose kid might get whooping cough and lead to death. We're a nation of fear. This is like our natural default of the way we go. That's point number one today. Fear is our default feeling. Fear is our default feeling. You and I don't have to try to be afraid of things. You and I don't have to invite fear into our life. It's our absolute default. In fact, 40 million Americans, 18%, have been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. That's 1 in 5 people who have said, fear has so much power over my life that I actually have gone to my doctor and said, I need some help because this thing is ruling over me. That's not counting all the people who have experienced some level of fear and anxiety in their life and they just haven't gone to a doctor to admit it. It's really an unbelievable thing. Now, this stat does not at all surprise me because if you've seen the Awaited show, you know that we start this show not with a baby in a hay-filled manger, but we take it all the way back. Take it all the way back to the garden where the scene of everyone is living alive. There's animals dancing around, and we see Adam and Eve, and they're living in perfect harmony with God. And as the story goes, we're told that an enemy comes in the form of a serpent, and Satan convinces Adam and Eve, hey, God's really not out for your best. In fact, the tree he doesn't want you to eat from, he just knows that if you eat from that, you'll be as smart as him, and he's holding out on you. So Adam and Eve, they eat of the fruit, their eyes are opened, and what I didn't know was check out the next lines in the Bible after that story. Comes out of Genesis. It says this, but the Lord God called to the man and said to him, where are you? And he said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. The very first response to disobedience, to the fall, to the toxic waste that was poured into our relationship with God, the very first feeling, very first emotion after it is one of fear. It's one of fear. Fear is our default feeling. In fact, it was Mary's default feeling in the Christmas story. Let's take a look at what it says about her. It says, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. He came to her and said, greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you. But she was greatly troubled at the saying, and tried to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. A lot of us know this story. Let me unpack this for you. So when we set up our nativity scene, we set up Mary and Joseph, and they look like middle-aged adults. History would actually tell us that's not the case. Mary is most likely 14, 15 years old. It was very common in their culture. As soon as a woman would come into adulthood, she would be betrothed to a man to marry. And this betrothal is much different than what you might imagine it to look like. Yes, it's sort of one of these arranged deals, but their engagement is just as, if not more serious than the marriage itself. They're betrothed for 1 year, and to get out of the betrothal, it takes a divorce. So, typically we reserve divorce for after someone's married, but even this engagement, to get out of it, requires a divorce. So here's this 14, 15-year-old girl who's in this very serious commitment, and an angel busts into her room in the middle of the night. And this is not a fat, precious moment, naked baby flapping its wings like we all think. This is like a warrior angel, the ones that we see on the sheets that we project. And these warrior angels are God's killing machines. They're his Navy SEALs, and they've wiped out entire nations at God's command. And one of these shows up to a 14-year-old girl. And what's Mary? She's afraid. She's afraid. Did you even catch the words? This angel shows up, and he says something very, a big compliment to Mary. He says, hey, Mary, God has found favor with you. And even those words don't resonate because she's thinking, this is really inconvenient timing. I don't understand what's happening here. I'm really, really afraid. And the angel has to say, hey, fear not, fear not. Even the mother of Jesus Christ, her default feeling was one of fear. It was one of fear. This, if I sort of look back over the course of my life, I would say the area that I've struggled the most with, an area in my life that I would love to get rid of, is that of fear. If I look at my family tree, I can see how, some people are predisposed to maybe be alcoholics. Some people are predisposed to other things via their DNA. I would just say in my family tree, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of worry. There's some times where it requires prescription medication. And that's just the way that our family tree is there's some natural anxiety in there. It's my family's default feeling. I can look back and think, man, first time I remember being really afraid was getting ready to go back to school. First grade, it was summertime, and I remember cowering and being afraid to go back to school because of fire drills. I was so scared of what fire drills meant. It didn't even mean the building was up there. It was just like, ooh, I don't like fire drills. I remember coming home after school, watching Mickey Mouse Club or whatever it was, and that little illustration of a tornado would pop up in the top of the screen, like tornado watch. And I was like under my bed in the position that you assume, like a tornado's coming, it's going to wipe us out. I mean, unbelievable fears. Remember one time I was at a Gold Circle, and back when the round clothing racks were a thing, and I was hiding in there. And when my mom finally found me, I wasn't scared because I didn't realize I was lost. She knew I was lost. I wasn't scared until she told me everything that could have happened had someone stolen me. And then from that day on, I had one of those like Velcro wristbands with a telephone cord attached to her being drugged through the store. I mean, fear was an integral part of my life. And as I matured, my fears matured. My fears matured. The first time I was old enough to sort of have cash flow in the bank, I remember a habit going to fifththird.com all the time, because, man, one overdraft fee was like the first domino on the way to financial ruin. Or I remember being really, really afraid of what my friends and what my professors, what my bosses thought of me, and I was only one mistake away from them sort of writing me off. And so my fear of losing their approval was a very, very real thing. And then as I've even aged and gotten a little older, I've had this weird thing where sometimes different parts of my body hurt for no reason. And within 5 minutes, I've convinced myself that this achy shoulder is probably some sort of rare form of cancer that I should go get checked out. It's just crazy, irrational fears. But you know what? As crazy and as irrational as they are, I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone because 20% of Americans have gone to the doctor and said, hey, I've got this crazy irrational fear thing going on and I need some help from it. And there are many, many more who haven't made that step but struggle with fear. This is not, oh, you startled me fear. This is the fear that can keep you in bed in the morning. This is the fear that is unrooted, but it's so real, it's like something you believe in. And you can convince yourself that it's true. As I was sort of figuring out my points, one of the ones that I had early on was fear is the opposite of faith. Fear is the opposite of faith. And as I sort of was hashing that out with some guys, I said, hey, actually disagree. Fear is not the opposite of faith. Fear is just putting your faith in the wrong thing. That's point number 2. Fear is false faith. Fear is false faith. If faith is saying, God, I believe you are good. I believe you are who you say you are. I know that you have my best interests at heart, and I put all my faith in you. Then fear, by inverse, is simply saying, God, hey, I want to believe you're good. I want to believe you have my best, but I just don't. I just don't. And because I can't count on you, I've got to do everything I can to control the outcomes of these situations. Fear is false faith. This is sort of how Joseph comes onto the scene. Let's check out what happened with him. Matthew chapter 1. Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. And her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. Let's unpack what's going on with Joseph here for a minute. Pre-angel visiting, Joseph's hard at work. He's hard at work. And this sweet young teenage girl who is going to call his wife comes to him and says, hey, Joseph, he can tell she's a little distraught. Hey, you know that whole thing about how you haven't really seen my elbows or my knees, and we've been really good sleeping at our own houses? Well, I'm pregnant. But don't worry, I'm pregnant from the Holy Spirit. Now, Joseph, if I put myself in Joseph's shoes, he has two reactions he could go down. He could either go down the route that this girl is crazy, she's lost it, there's no way possible that she could be pregnant with God's son, or he goes down this route, she's just a liar. She's trying to pull the wool over my eyes. God only knows what she's been doing, but I'll tell you what Joseph does. What Joseph does, it says he considered all these things. He started to put his faith in his fear. In fact, he did it so much when he thought, if this is true, my entire reputation is just dragged through the mud. If this is true, any chances of my business growing just got cut down. If this is true, my hopes of finding a wife that actually will respect me is gone. He starts to process through all these things. He even goes, okay, well, worst case scenario, what happens? Well, I either take her as my wife and people think that we've been getting together before we were married, or worse, people think that I had the wool pulled over my eyes and they think that I just took this girl as my bride when really she's been sleeping around on me. His worst fears, he's projecting them out, and what does he do? He says, I'm going to divorce her quietly. He's a respectful guy, he's a noble guy, but he's going to get rid of her. And what's it take? It takes an angel to appear to him and go, hey, Joseph, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. It took an angel appearing to him for his fear to become faith. I was looking through stories of people who, amidst opportunity for great fear, didn't let it define what they believed. And man, I don't think you can find a better one than Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill, man, proud to be from the West Side, Mount St. Joe. Lauryn Hill, let me tell you, if anyone has the right to put their fear and faith in the same place, it's Lauryn Hill. She's not fearful of how she might die. She knows how she might die. If anyone has the right to lay in bed, when their alarm clock goes off, hit the snooze button over and over, it's Lauryn Hill. If anyone has the right to sort of be like, hey, my life is doom and gloom, this really just sucks, I'm not going to go on anymore, it's Lauryn Hill. And yet, what does she do? She goes after it. She says, hey, I'm not going to let this worst case scenario define my life. I'm not going to let this diagnosis tell me who I am or keep me from God's plans. In fact, she is a woman of great faith. Check out what she said in this USA Today article that I found. One January night, I was having a meltdown. I asked God if I could do anything. I didn't know what he sent me here for. I wanted to know what he sent me here for. Whatever you sent me here for, I'm ready to do it. What keeps me going is remembering why I'm here. I told him I'd take every opportunity to speak for the kids who can't speak. Man, I want to be like her. I want to be when the deck is stacked against me and when I have every right to be curled up in a ball in a corner, wrecked with fear. I want to be like Lauryn Hill, go, hey, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let this have the last say. I'm going to be out there. In fact, talk about news stories that always have a negative turn. Last week, I'm scrolling through and said, oh man, Lauryn Hill finally admitted into hospice. They've invited hospice into her house. Okay, all right, well, she's had a good run. It's coming toward the end. Now, our producer, Ty, comes up to me this morning and says, hey, did you hear? Lauryn Hill played in a basketball game yesterday, and she scored her team's first points. What? The world is continually going, oh, this is a really sad story. Lauren, I can't imagine what you're going through. She's going, hey, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm on the court, and I'm scoring points for my team. It's unbelievable how she does this. There's a scene in the Awaited show that I think illustrates this struggle beautifully, and it's that of Mary and Joseph. The song is called This Changes Everything. And the guy that sings it is also a friend of mine and the guy who wrote it. And so I said, Craig, would you just give us a little bit of the behind the scenes of what's going on in that story? Check this out.
My name's Craig, and I had the opportunity to get to contribute to the Awaited show by writing the Mary and Joseph song. Back in 2007, I was part of a songwriting team at Crossroads, and we were given the assignment, write a song about the relational tension that Mary and Joseph were experiencing when Joseph found out that God made his fiancée pregnant. And write it kind of in this Portishead, Sigur Rós style and make it sweet. And so that's what I tried to do. Turns out it was the best creative thing I had done all year. It was a really encouraging, energizing project that drew me even closer into Crossroads and into God and just understanding all kinds of things. But, in the moment of that, I just felt like I was taking dictation. Like, I feel like what I was writing is what God really just put straight into me just so I could write it, down on paper. And, if you look at the song, it's kind of got this Peter and the Wolf vibe, where different instruments represent different characters. And so we're using all these creative elements just to highlight the tension that was happening and maybe some of the underlying fear that was causing the problem in this relationship at the time. So, you have this beautiful organ that represents Mary. You have this kind of ratty, angry guitar that represents Joseph, and really the song is more about Joseph than anything. And if you think about why do guys get angry, a lot of times they get angry because they're scared, and that's just the masculine way to show, to express fear. He was scared. Well, like, what does the future mean? What is this? How do I take care of a life? Like, I'm not ready to be a dad. There are all kinds of things. But what's really interesting to me is that this song gets to just play a moment in time that is eventually resolved. You see the rest of the story that Mary and Joseph, they don't sit in that fear. Like, they eventually decide that they're gonna trust love over fear, and that's where you get songs like Silent Night and Oh Holy Night and the Rejoice at the end of it, because they chose to believe in the love that trumped the fear that was in their hearts.
Very cool. I love what Craig says about, hey, we don't get to the happy ending without Mary and Joseph confronting and walking through their fear. Their fear was very, very real, but they could have derailed God's entire redemption plan had they submitted to their fear, but they didn't. They didn't. In fact, they walked right through it. It's point 3 today. Fear is not our fate. Fear is not our fate. You can look at their responses. You can see it's very obvious that amidst fear, they choose to follow what God says. Here's Mary's response in Luke 1:38. It says, "Behold," Mary says, "I'm the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." Hey, I get that I'm just a young teenage girl. I don't understand why you chose me. I don't even know what this road is going to look like. But because I trust you and because I know you have my best interest, and even though I'm feeling fearful right now, I'm going to choose to walk through it. I'm going to choose to walk through it. I'm going to choose to believe that you could do something in my story that I couldn't do in and of myself. Joseph has a similar reaction. It's in Matthew. It says, "When Joseph woke from sleep, immediately after waking up, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, but knew her not until she'd given birth to a son. And he called his name Jesus." Joseph, man, he's projected all the way through. He knows that people are probably going to think he's a laughingstock. No one is going to believe, even though his heart's been turned, and this angel's come and say, "Hey, Joseph, you don't have to be afraid of this." The angel did not appear to all of his friends and family to tell them as well. People are going to be looking at this situation very strangely. And yet Joseph says, "Hey, count me in." He wakes up from a dream. He goes and gets married. He said, "Let's do this. Let's do this." And yet, I think it'd be safe to say that after the angels appearing to them, after saying, "We're in," they probably experienced more moments of fear. I would imagine for Mary, the second that she walked out and her bump was starting to show and people were giving her awkward glances, she probably felt a little bit afraid. I would guess, being a father myself, that when Joseph was going to Bethlehem to be counted for the census, and his wife goes into labor on the back of a camel, and every hotel room is booked up, and he's got to put her in a stable with stinky animals and crap all around, I would guess he's going, "This is not good. This is not good." In fact, the three magi, the three wise men that come, as soon as they leave Jesus, Joseph has another dream. Check out what it says in this dream, Matthew chapter 2. "Now when they had departed," talking about the wise men, "behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod, the ruler of the day, is about to search for the child to destroy him.'" So Joseph and Mary, they've said, okay, we can do this. We're going to be a part of the redemption plan. Mary gives birth to a child. The shepherds, the magi, they come, they celebrate, and then we just think, oh, and Jesus grows up, and then he does his mission. No, like immediately afterward, another angel comes to Joseph and says, okay, good, but you got to get out of here because Herod's trying to kill Jesus. They had a lot of opportunities for fear to creep back in, but they didn't let it determine their fate. This spring, we're going to be doing an all-church journey. If you're new around here, every year we get on the same page. We shut everything down outside of the weekend. We get people into small groups with a guide. It's an amazing area of intense growth for a lot of us. And this year, we're going to be talking about this topic. In fact, around the creative table, the sort of placeholder name was Fearless. Fearless. And as those guys sort of decided what this journey would look more and more like, somebody just said, hey, guys, we're fooling ourselves if we think that we can actually get to a place where we're fearless. As long as we're in this world, as long as we're carrying around these bodies, fear is probably going to be a part of the equation. But what if we could teach people to be brave? What if we could be courageous in the midst of life's storms? So this year, we'll be embarking this spring on a journey called Brave. I think it's going to be very, very good. It's not about being fearless. It is about being brave. One of the best stories that I've seen come my way is actually right from this community. And I asked them, I said, hey, would it be okay if I shared this story? Is it too soon? They said, no, absolutely. So they wrote this email in, and I want to read it to you. In the final weeks of my pregnancy, the women in my small group had asked if there was anything they could pray for. I was a week overdue, and asked that the baby would come soon, and more importantly, that labor would go well, and that we'd trust the Lord during this time. After a doctor's appointment the next morning, they determined that it was vital to induce labor. We were beyond excited to meet our baby in the coming hours. And after laboring through the night, we finally met our daughter, Noelle Providence. Post-delivery, I felt great, but that feeling had quickly passed. I began to experience excruciating back pain and massive hemorrhaging. The feeling in my legs went away, then my hands, and my hearing started to fade. It was a domino effect, and I knew something wasn't right. Before long, the room was flooded with doctors and nurses assessing the situation. It went from bad to worse, and I was bleeding at a massive rate and could barely keep consciousness. It was everyone's mission to keep me awake and conscious in the delivery room. As my husband stood beside, praying and encouraging me, the doctors updated him, saying, at this point, we need to do whatever we can to save Mom and take her to the OR immediately. Weights of fear and doubts on whether or not I would survive began to set in. As the doctors transported me out of the delivery room into the operating room, my husband looked at me and reminded me, we live for the kingdom and not for this world, and that no matter what happens, the Lord is good. We told each other how much we loved one another, and I encouraged him that he'd be a great dad to our baby girl. In a circumstance such as this, where there's so much to be afraid of, we remembered that we had trained and practiced putting our faith in Jesus and his promises, even when it made zero sense. After the operation, I found out that I lost about 80% of the total blood that was in my body due to a rare uterine complication. I also suffered a punctured lung when the doctors inserted a central line directly into my heart and spent 4 days in the ICU recovering. Doctors did not expect breastfeeding to be possible after losing that amount of blood. Throughout the entire pregnancy, we've been actively praying against fear. We noticed how fear paralyzes our family and keeps us from experiencing all that the Lord has for us. We made it a goal for our family that in times of fear or suffering, we'd actively choose to trust the Lord and actually believe that God is good and has good things planned for us. When I was still in the ICU, I was immediately able to produce milk to breastfeed. The punctured lung was fixed and back to normal. My body received all the blood transfusions well, and the bleeding had stopped. We later found out that all the doctors who had performed the operation had begun their shift 2 minutes after Noelle was born, relieving the doctors who had been there throughout the night. In spite of all the negative turns, we saw the providence of the Lord 10 times what we'd expected, and our faith was built as a result. Come on. What I love about that story, it was in the midst of great fear, they recognized it and they said, we're not going this way. We're not going this way. They trained for it, and they saw when fear comes knocking, we have a choice. We have a choice. This is something I've been exercised in all year long. When my family a year ago was asked to pick up our roots and move to the west side and start, I would love to say, my immediate reaction was, hey, I'm all in, but it wasn't. It was one of fear. My default feeling was, we've worked really hard to make all the friends that we have. We're not going to find them, especially as weird pastors. People are not going to want to like us. Man, the west side's a different beast. People are never going to receive us. And yet, we walked through our fear. And we're experiencing God's favor in a way that we never have before because we didn't let fear become our fate. Just recently, our daughter Liv, 1-year-old, she's at her grandma's house and she falls 7 feet down onto a concrete floor, slab basement. And, my immediate fear coming around the corner and seeing her laying there with no breath and mouth wide open, it was one of fear. It was my mind immediately went to, okay, fractured skull, swelling on the brain, what's going on? And just realized in that moment, wait a second, I can choose, I have a choice here. I can either be riddled with fear or I can be a good dad and I can go scoop her up. Just a couple weeks ago, our 3-year-old Emmy, man, when you have kids, you start to have more things to be fearful of if you're not recognizing the trend. Emmy was awake from her nap in her bed, and I go in and say, hey, sweetie, you ready to get up? Sweetie? And I tell my wife, I say, hey, this disobedience, not responding on the first thing she's told, I think it might be more than just being 3. So we take her to the doctor. She failed both of her hearing tests. I'll tell you, my default feeling was a little bit of fear. It was a little bit of fear. I still don't know what's up with her hearing. We don't know if tubes and antibiotics are going to clear it up, and if this is at its root some long-term hearing loss. But I do know this. I've been reminding myself that before Emmy was my child, she was God's child, and He's going to take care of her better than I ever could. I've been reminding myself of it. So if you're seeing the pattern, man, this is not about some mental gymnastics to make fear not our fate. This is not about how can we just take the wrong thoughts and push them out. No, this is about a battle. This is about a battle that's going on over your very mind and over your very soul. Ephesians, last verse for today, says it like this. It says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Look, this war has already been won. Jesus' birth defeated fear. It was the death of fear, but we are still going to have some battles, and we're still going to lose some. But the reality is fear does not have to be your fate. Fear does not have to be your fate. Look, I know that for many of us, there are lies that we have believed that have had roots of fear in our lives for a long, long time. Long time. Maybe your deepest fear is around your health. Maybe your deepest fear is around the diagnosis that you were given. And you just need to know the truth there. You need to know the truth is in Psalm 103, God says, hey, praise the Lord who gives all these amazing benefits, one of which is He heals all your diseases and He redeems your life from the pit. Fear not. Fear not. That's what God says about you. Maybe for you, there's some immense trial or suffering in your life, and you go, this is going to be the one I'm not going to make it through. This is going to be the one that I just can't walk through this trial in my life, and yet the truth of the matter is God says, hey, when you walk through the water, I'll be with you. And when you walk through the fire, those flames, they're not going to touch you. Why? Because you're mine. Fear not. Fear not. Maybe it's the everyday materialistic things where, man, you can't even pay your bills, let alone do Christmas for your kids. And you look at the account and you get fear in your gut. And you'd be reminded that God said to His disciples when they were worried about the same stuff, hey, don't you know that your Heavenly Father, that He loves you? Don't you know that He's going to clothe you and feed you just like He does the lilies of the valley and the birds of the air? Fear not. Fear not. Or maybe at Christmas time, all these Christmas trees and Christmas songs just remind you that you are alone. That whether it's through the loss of a loved one or a divorce or kids who are on the other side of the country right now, all the Christmas just can't be done soon enough for you. And you need to be reminded that God says, hey, I will never leave you or forsake you. Fear not. Fear not. I love this song that we did at the beginning because it puts two things close together that we wouldn't really pair up. It says, fearful saints. A saint is someone who said, hey, Jesus, I'm all in with you, and yet they're characterized as being full of fear. Full of fear. You know what the Christmas story says? It says, even though you're still fearful, even though you're fearful, hey, the clouds that you dread, they're big with mercy and they're going to break. They're going to break on your head with God's goodness. They're going to break on your head with God's mercy. They're going to break on your head with God's provision. And he's going to show you that he's good. He's going to show you that because he sent his son to lay in a manger, to grow up and take on the sins of the world, he's going to show that that type of perfect love, it casts out all fear. There's no more room for any of it. God, I pray for that these people, whoever in here has wrestled with the chains and bondage of fear, whoever in here has felt the tug in their gut of not even wanting to get out of bed because the fear is so great, God, your perfect love casts out all fear. You sent your son Jesus to snuff it out. God, I pray that that would be real to us, that we would experience that perfect love so much and so fully that fear has no place in our lives. Amen. Hey, why don't we stand up, and as an exercise, let's do this song again. And I would encourage you that when it says, and when you're singing, the clouds you so much dread, what would it look like if you personified those? What would it look like if you pictured your worst fear, the thing that you cannot get out of your mind, and you said, hey, God, I know that even that thing, it's big with mercy and it's going to break. Let's sing that.
God moves in a mysterious way. His wonders to perform. Plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in an unsearchable minds of never failing skill, treasures up his bright designs and works his sovereign will. We fearful saints, fresh courage take, clouds you so much dread, big with mercy and shall break. In blessing, in blessing, in blessing song. Your head, ye fearful saint, fresh courage take, clouds you so much dread, be with mercy and shall break. In blessing, in blessings, in blessings on your head.
I bless you with courage. I bless you with bravery. I bless you with the ability to know that fear does not have to be your fate because you serve a God who is full of perfect love, and he says it can't stay here anymore. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.